Good evening and welcome to the first CDC Ph live stream. I'm with Dr. Homer Lim. Good evening po, Doc.
Good evening. Good evening to everyone who is watching this episode.
Please feel free to leave your comments and reactions on our comment page on the comments underneath. For those who may not know, we are CDCPH, Concerned Doctors and Citizens of the Philippines. Doc, you want to give us a brief background on the movement? Bakit ba nag-start ang CDCPH?
Well, actually, no. So CDC means the concerned doctors and citizens, no, of the Philippines. So this group was formed because we were very much worried or concerned about the current status of what the government has been doing. No? So presently, we're on some form of lockdowns. No? So the issue there is how do we get out of lockdowns safely, no? So that we want to be able to bring back, or at least resuscitate our economy also, because our economy has really been hit quite hard with these lockdowns, no? So if you have read already, more than 20 million Filipinos are in some form of hunger, no? And then you have about 15 million people who are actually jobless, no? So the this organization or this group was formed because we have the same ideas and the same purpose, which is how to get out of this lockdown safely and bring back people to go back to work and be able to live a pretty decent life.
We're actually waiting for two more of our members. I don't want to get into the issue of the hoax until Doc Iggy comes on board kasi siya yung tinitira na ano. But even before Doc Iggy comes on board, Doc Homer, can you please explain if CDCPH believes that COVID is a hoax?
Well, if CDC believe it's a hoax, then there's no reason for this. How do you say, this organization to exist, right? Because our organization is or our community is really about how to treat the patients with COVID early. At the same time protecting those who are vulnerable, and lastly, again, how to end the lockdown and make everybody live a decent life in the way they lived before this COVID thing happened.
Okay, Doc, and let's lay out the core platform, the core protocol that CDCPH is proposing to government. And before that, are we anti-government? Is CDCPH anti-government?
I
Or is
think
it
that's one of the yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that has been being brought up by a lot of people and a lot of groups. Now, we are not anti-government, so our goal really is how to help the government come to a realization that we cannot wait for a vaccine just to be able to lift the lockdown. I think that's a bit unfair to a lot of people, especially those who have to live on a daily wage, because if they cannot go to work, then they cannot eat. So what we really want to achieve or help people, and especially the government, especially those who are in policy making, is there are other ways, there are other ways than just vaccines. We can actually get out of this lockdown by again doing what we call early outpatient treatment for those who are infected with COVID. And then the second one is really, as I said, we have to protect the vulnerable, meaning those who are elderly, those who have comorbidities meaning those who have hypertension, diabetes, those who are obese, those are very above 60, 65. So these are the people we have to protect. So we have to protect them, the vulnerables, no? So that if they do get infected, then we are prepared to help them as soon as possible. But in the meantime, prior to if they are not infected, then we have to just make sure that they are as far away from being infected. So, and then number three, we end the lockdowns and then institute what we call focus protection or isolation of only those who are sick, not to isolate or quarantine everybody, including the healthy, because it does not help everyone. You know, if you put a whole city, a whole province, a whole country in a lockdown, of course the economy will suffer, as we already are seeing right now. But if we are able to lock out or isolate patients, you know, just keep them where they are and then treat them there, I think, and then let the other people who are healthy, let them live, let them, you know, help bring back our economy. I think that's the more realistic goal that we really want to see. I'm sure the government also wants this to happen.
Right. So, Doc, you mentioned out. Okay, here he's. I think he's getting ready now. Francis, give me a thumbs up if you're ready to. No, okay, he's still putting on his headphones. Okay. Since you mentioned outpatient treatment, Doc, that makes it very clear that you are not
Yes.
in the camp that believes there is no cure, there is no treatment that is possible for this COVID. Many people, kasi unfortunately, appear to believe that. Eto na, ready na ba si Francis? Just give me a thumbs up, Francis. Yeah, okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. Here we go. Yeah, there's Mr. Francis Abraham.
Hi
Can you
guys,
hear us?
do I
Hi,
have
hi,
audio?
hi.
Sige. Okay, and finally, Doc Iggy Agbayani is joining us.
Oh, great.
All right, and here we go. Okay, kompleto na po tayo.
Yun.
The gang
Yo.
is all here.
Wonderful.
Okay. So, Doc Iggy and Francis, we were just discussing
Hindi ka
outpatient
marinig.
treatment. Good evening. Sige, bati po
You have
muna
to wear
kayo.
your headphones, Doc Iggy.
Headphones daw, Doc, if you can. Ito na ba yung bagong mic?
Ito na ang bagong mic.
Hindi pa eh.
Hindi pa rin, okay. Sige, Doc, you
Ah,
want to
hindi pa
introduce
nakabigti.
yourself very briefly, Doc? Doc Iggy, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Headphone. Headphone.
Wait lang ha. Wait lang. Hindi ko
Okay.
marinig masyado
What's
eh.
the sign for headphone?
Ayun, yung ginawa mo kanina, tama. Okay lang yun. Okay, balik muna tayo sa ano ha, while Doc Iggy is sorting out his technical issues. Doc Homer, if there's an outpatient treatment that we're suggesting, number one, that means we don't believe it's a hoax because we're suggesting
Yes,
treatment.
that's right.
Okay,
That's
so we,
exactly right.
we understand that the virus does exist, and that's why we're talking about treating it. Now,
That's right.
the next lie or next false understanding or misunderstanding of COVID is that there is no cure. But you're talking about the treatment. Ano
May
po bang
Yes.
cure.
So
difference ng
there,
ano? Ba't ayaw nila sabihin na may cure ang COVID?
well, again, I guess I don't want to go into the politics of that, but I mean, medically, no, medically, there is a treatment. As we could already see in the hospitals, no, the death rates now in the hospital are quite low as compared to what it was like 3, 4 months ago. Now the hospitals do know how to treat it. I think the doctors now are very, very confident in treating patients who are hospitalized. But our main goal here is we don't want them to be hospitalized. We want to treat them early, keep them out of the hospital, keep them from spending millions of pesos, keep them together with their families, because as you already know, when you're hospitalized, you're going to be isolated and alone. At the same time, when you're hospitalized, you're going to be spending hundreds of thousands to millions of pesos. So that's what we are trying to avoid.
Okay, Francis, you want to jump in here while I do some technical things here?
Yeah. You know, when there is politics involved, as Dr. Homer said, no? Uh, and there are also uh, numerous studies, especially for hydroxychloroquine. Always point out hydroxychloroquine because of the number of studies that have been
Mm,
made already. There are about
yes,
140 plus now and counting. And
yes,
most of these studies, you can only count a handful that is negative to hydroxychloroquine, and the negative studies can easily be subjected to review by our doctors Homer and Iggy and tell you what was wrong with these studies. Now, basically, the way they conducted these studies are wrong. Anyways, there are so many studies on HCQ and if used as a cocktail, which shows effectivity against COVID. So in other words, may treatment protocol na effective na pwedeng gamitin ng taong bayan. At ito ay very cheap. Mura lang.
Yep.
Kung kaya't
Yes.
hindi ba ang gusto ng ating ang plano ng ating protocols na ginagawa ngayon, I believe, ni Doc Iggy at nila Doc Homer, yung comprehensive plan ay i-nationalize yung scale of use nito together with other possible treatments na napag-aaralan din na dumadami na rin ng ebidensya na epektibo ang mga ito. Kung kaya't alam mo ako'y I am surprised kung bakit nga ito hindi tinitignan ng ating sariling Department of Health at yung mga doktor na nanggagamot ng COVID, yung mga frontliners na doktor na gumagamot ng COVID, kailangan labay. Kung ako nga ay civilian nag-aaral ako at nag-google ano pa kaya yung mga doktor na gumagamot ng COVID, kailangan medyo may konting aral naman. At I guess you guys are so busy, but we are at war. There is war against COVID, so kailangan mag-aral tayo and educate ourselves. Even as patients, ikaw, Mari, you educate yourself also as a patient, di ba, kung anong iinumin mo.
Right. Right.
Tama ba, Mari?
Salamat at nilinaw mo na we are at war against COVID at hindi sa gobyerno.
Ako, pro-government, Duterte ako. I am a Duterte, supporter.
Okay, tanong naman natin kay Doc Iggy. Doc, okay na bang technical issues?
Okay na bang technical issues niya?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Kailangan mag-ano ka lang, earphone. Maganda kung may earphone.
Yeah, we're getting an echo
Yeah,
here,
we're
Doc.
getting an echo here, Doc.
Okay, sige. Actually, dun sa I don't have my earphone now
Sige pa.
Pero hinaan ko ng konti. Yeah. Yeah, is that better?
Yes, Doc. Fine.
Yes.
Is that better? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sige, go ahead, Doc.
Anyway, sige, go ahead.
Oh, yan.
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
What's the question?
Okay. Natakil na namin, Doc, yung issue na hindi tayo anti-government, hindi anti-government ang CDC Ph. And we also began to explore the possibility that CDC Ph considers COVID a hoax. As we pointed out earlier, it's clear that if we're talking about treatment options, then we understand completely that COVID is a real disease, a real virus that needs to be addressed. And so, if you would just once again reiterate to our viewers that we do not believe that COVID is a hoax. It does not exist.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a hoax. My anesthesiologist died from COVID. The parents of my best friend, Dr. Jonas Del Rosario, both died of COVID. And there are numbers to show of the many people who died from it. I don't think we are saying that it's a hoax. But sometimes when you try to correct an overstatement of something, and say some people say it's 10 times what it is, and then you say it's really this number, you can get accused of saying that also you don't believe in it. So I don't think that's right. So I think that's a problem that should be addressed. And there was never a single statement where I said I think it's a hoax. I have made some criticisms about it, that it could be not a real pandemic, but more of a bad epidemic. But it's certainly real.
Doc, why are you
Doc,
making the
why are you
distinction?
making
Kung
the
ang
distinction?
pandemic
Kung
ibig
ang
sabihin
pandemic ibig
nakakalat sa
sabihin
buong mundo,
nakakalat sa
why not
buong
use
mundo,
the
why
term?
not
Why are you
use the term?
uncomfortable
Why are you
using the term
uncomfortable
pandemic?
using the term pandemic?
Because yung ano the real pandemic was the Spanish flu, which is 50 million people, and this COVID-19 is a little more than 1 million plus. But if you think about the flu virus, which is not a ever classified as a pandemic, and it's not even new, so it's been around for quite some time. I think mga 600,000 plus ang nagkaka-flu a year. So it's not really something that you would consider a major pandemic. It certainly is a bad epidemic. And I'm not saying that it's less dangerous than the flu, but I think you tend to scare people too much if you call it such a bad pandemic.
Ano sa palagay mo,
Mas
Francis?
palagi mo, Francis.
Jump in.
Jump in.
Okay.
Okay.
Ang ang akin nga ay nagagalit pati aso ko,
Nagagalit
tinan
pati
niyo
aso ko,
tumatahol.
tinan niyo, tumatahol.
Ang
Ang,
ang
ang
sitwasyon natin ngayon
sitwasyon natin ngayon
sa COVID ay may
sa
echo pa
COVID,
rin
may
tayo,
echo pa
no?
rin tayo.
Yeah, let me see if I can do something
Let
about
me
that.
see if I can
Kailangan
do
Doc
something.
Iggy, mag-ano
Kailangan
ka,
Doc Iggy, mag-ano ka.
mag
Mag,
mute ka muna.
mute ka muna.
Nag-mute ka.
Nag-mute ka.
Hello?
Yan,
O
okay.
yan, tinan mo
Okay.
nawala.
Ngayon ko
So
na nakita.
anyways,
Okay.
o kaya mag-headphone si Doc Iggy dapat. In any case, ganito na it is not and we can see naman na hindi masyadong as deadly as they say it is. It is deadly for certain age brackets. Na nakikita nga natin base sa datos mismo na ibinibigay sa atin from sa buong mundo, ha. Kagaya nga ng below 19, hindi siya, it is not deadly at all. Halos zero yata ang death rates ng mga tao below 19. For elderly, mas dumidelikado siya. But hindi siya nalalayo sa flu, if I'm not mistaken, the doctors will say
Yes.
this, hindi siya nalalayo.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, di
agree.
ba?
Agree, no.
Yun
It's
na,
not it's
yun
not
na si Doc
as, it's
Homer
not as deadly as the flu or the
as the
influenza.
flu. Okay.
Yeah.
So lahat ng ito, alimbawa flu, lahat ng ito, if you have the flu, if you treat it early, ah, ay ay mas maigi. Hindi siya lalala. Pero pag iniiwan mo ito and you do not treat it right away, ay lalala siya. Every case of COVID, if I'm not, again, correct me if I'm wrong, doctors, I'm trying to talk like a informed patient here. Like in any case of flu, COVID begins with mild symptoms. Okay, hindi
Yeah.
naman bigla
Yep.
na lang isang araw lahat na ng sintomas sa'yo, hindi ka na makahinga.
Yeah.
Isang araw,
Yeah.
it starts slowly. So ang advice ko sa mga
Yes.
taong bayan, kung may flu kayo or may feeling kayo na may inuubo na kayo, may sipon, agahan nyo na kagad yung pagkonsulta sa isang doktor na marunong gumamot. First of all, tanungin nyo muna yung doktor, marunong ba kayo gumamot, Doc? Baka naman pag if you suspect that I have COVID, biglang pauwiin nyo na lang ako at mag-quarantine na lang kayo, wala naman kayong binibigay na gamot sa akin. Aba, humanap
Yeah.
kayo ng mga
Yeah,
doktor.
that's.
Tama ba?
And you know what,
Marunong
that
gumamot.
happens a lot. Yeah,
Oo,
that
yan.
happens a lot. A lot of patients actually, no, when they have cough and colds, no, they just give them some paracetamol and send them home. And send them home, not even tell them to maybe have to isolate yourself or anything. So when they do get home, then they infect other household members. Then
Ayun.
then it gets
Yun
worse,
na.
di ba? Lalong naging
Ayun na.
grabe kasi buong pamilya na, buong household. So
Ah,
maraming kumbaga there's a lot of things na kailangan talagang i-correct, no? So sadly,
correct.
not enough
Mm.
information. I think that's the biggest issue here is there's not enough information for everyone to understand or maintindihan how does this affect us or how does COVID affect us. Yung takot lang talaga na you will die of COVID. But the other
Ayun.
important things nakalimutan na ng lahat or nakalimutan
Mm.
na i-emphasize. I think that's one of the things that we also need to do is inform the public also.
Educate. Educate, yun nga yung sinasabi ko.
Educate.
Isa yan sa mga plano na ginagawa ninyo, nila Doc Homer at ni Doc Iggy, yung part of it is educating the people and the countryside doctors or the barangay health officials kung paano ang paggamot nitong
Treatment.
mga treatment
That's
itong
right.
COVID na ito. At isa
That's right.
yan, at
Yeah.
naniniwala ako, isa dyan, ay kung may flu-like symptoms ka, you should treat it. Sinabi ito ni Doc Fidel eh. Kung may Fidel Fernandez na taga Malaysia,
Fernandez.
kung may oo,
Yes.
kung may flu-like symptoms ka, dapat ang doktor should treat it as if it were COVID. You
Yes.
understand?
Yes.
Flu-like
Agree.
symptoms na medyo
Agree.
matindi. To be safe. Hindi ba? To be
That's
safe.
right. That's right.
So in
So,
other words,
kahit na
bago pa
suspicion
lang
pa lang, pwede na i-treat.
bago
Yes.
suspicion, oh, upon
Yes.
clinical ano ba yun? Clinical examination ng isang doktor,
Yun.
di ba?
Oh.
Yes.
Yun. So, even before testing, kaya nga minsan hindi na kailangan yung testing kasi obvious
Kaya nga eh.
obvious na may COVID yung tao eh. Even before testing,
Yes.
patawan na ng gamot. Hindi ba?
That's
Huwag na
right.
nating
Early.
intayin
So
na
that's what
lumabas
we
ang
call,
test.
yeah. Yeah. Tawag natin dyan
Mm.
early outpatient. Huwag na natin muna hintayin yung test. We treat it. So pag nag-negative ang test, edi you can stop. Pero kung positive, you continue. So you avoid them becoming, kumbaga, para hindi sila maging mas malubha yung sakit.
Okay, balikan na natin siguro yung issue kung bakit nasabi that we believe that COVID is a hoax.
Si Doc Iggy ang involved
yes,
dyan.
that's why we're going to turn to Doc Iggy to ask. Ano po ba nangyari? You were invited to be on a news show. Wag na natin pong banggitin ang pangalan.
Hindi, banggitin ko kaya.
Wag na lang, wag na lang.
Wag na lang, wag na lang. O, sige,
Oo.
sige. Wag na lang.
Ano bang nangyari, Doc? Were you asked directly whether you believe that COVID is a hoax?
Actually, I was asked what I think about people who are parang flat earthers, who yung parang mga anti-vaxxers.
Okay.
So I think that was the question being asked of me because I think they wanted me to say na, oh, I'm with those group. Kaya lang kasi ako I'm a very liberal-minded person. So I didn't say that those people should just be shut out. So I think they tried to misconstrue my statement as I'm one of them. That shouldn't be the fact. That's not a fact at all. I just say that sometimes those people should be listened to because these rants mean something. If they are rants and they actually feel that there's something wrong with the information they get, it could mean something. So we shouldn't just shut them out. And I think not really a journalist, who tried to twist your words to make it appear that you're part of them or that you agree with their theories. I think that's really wrong. Kasi nga, I'm really prone to being called that because I'm a very liberal-minded person. You say something to me, I listen to you. Maybe in a few months I'm wrong. Diba? Tama ba, Francis? Kasi may mga doktor na, no, I'm a doctor. I can't listen to you. I think you're probably stupid. You're probably a hoaxer. So that's a very common thing, throughout humanity. And once you call a person stupid, and he turns out to be right, you're forced to defend something just because of your ego. And I never want to be trapped into that kind of problem. That's why I never do that.
I
Yun.
think we should point out also that CDC Ph is comprised of a number of people. The PH Doctors Group is now at almost 8,000 people. And hindi naman pare-parehong mga view natin sa lahat ng bagay dito, di ba? What we essentially agree on is that lockdowns aren't working, that there are cures, that there's a prophylaxis even for COVID, which many deny, which many continue to say, no, that there's no cure, there's no prophylaxis. And so those are the key elements. Did I miss any other elements that are key to membership in the CDC Ph?
I thought
I
kailangan
don't
good
think
looking
so. Oo,
A
hindi
given na
naman,
yun,
hindi
Doc,
naman.
given.
That's
Oo.
why I didn't fear joining the group because I thought talaga kailangan good looking.
A- At saka hindi nila
So,
ini-exclude ang
joke
mga
yun joke ba
kalboso.
yun?
Hindi nila ini-exclude ang mga kalbo sa CDC Ph at saka sa flatten the field. Guys, in any case, I have been recently appointed to recruit people into our group and to ask people to support us. So, nananawagan po ako sa mga nakikinig. If you want to support us, join us at Flatten the Fear, the PH, and CDCP. Do we have our site na ba? Malapit
Oo,
na. We're going to have
which
our
one?
site.
May website tayo, tsaka nandun din yung Facebook page na madalas
Okay.
sinesenso ng Facebook.
Correct. At sinasabi ko po sa inyo na kami po ay wala po kaming pera na nagbinabayaran kami, hindi ko may tumatanggap ng pera. Pero tumatanggap po kami ng mga donasyon kasi mayroon kaming mga efforts to educate the people at it entails certain costs. At nananawagan rin ako sa mga corporation na tulungan niyo po kami kasi sama-sama po tayo sa advokasya na ito na gusto naman natin lahat, actually lahat ng taong bayan sawa na sa lockdown kasi gusto na rin talaga nating magbukas at to get our lives back to normal. May plano hong maganda ang CDC Ph at sina Dr. Agbayani at ang ating mga henyong doktor, henyo,
No?
mga
Totoo
henyong
naman eh.
doktor. O, totoo naman. Kasi may mga plano sila to open up the economy. Using one of the tools that they use is the Great Barrington Declaration.
Declaration.
Pero, alam nyo, bago pa lang magka-Great Barrington Declaration, may yung mga doktor na natin, kamukha ni Doc
Tama.
Iggy, sinabi na niya, the lockdowns will not work. At matagal na nating pinaglalaban na focus our resources dito sa mga vulnerable and the vulnerable and the elderly pala.
Okay.
Hindi tayo kasama doon sa elderly, Doc Iggy.
Hindi. Hindi pa. Ano pa yata, 2
In
years pa.
denial
2
ba kayo?
years.
Ano?
Can I tell a story
Yes,
about
please.
this? Actually, I'm amazed that I think some people think I'm a hoaxer. I'm part of this thing. Kasi may dun sa isang group ko ng mga maraming scientists doon, in-announce sa isang kaibigan ko that I have a talk on COVID. So, suddenly, there were some people commenting about me who don't really know me. But they were saying, why would you want a speaker like Mr. Agbayani who thinks this COVID is a hoax? Sabi ko, saan naman nanggaling yun? Sabi ko. So, sabi nila,
Ayan.
people need evidence-based information, not from people like Dr. Agbayani. So, siyempre, challenge ko yun. So, I was amazed na I think they really did not know me that well. And they were just thinking na may nagbanggit lang na gano'n. And I said, I actually do my research quite well. And then I do know what is evidence-based. And I've been doing evidence-based medicines since 1991 when I graduated. So very strange that how media can really twist who you are. And unfortunately, that's a very scientific group, and they actually listen to that because COVID apparently has become very politicized. Another name I was called was I was even called a Trump lover.
Oh
Bakit
my.
naman ako, I have anyone who is anti-lockdown, who has something to say against masks, suddenly becomes a Trump lover or something
Baka
like
naman,
that. No,
Doc,
parang,
baka naman may relasyon talaga kayo ni Donald Trump.
hindi, yung sa niya, yung sa mga kasama niya sa opisina yung nagdala ng COVID. Pangalan na maganda yan di ba? Pero, but kidding aside, it has become so politicized na they lose the ano eh, they lose the spirit of approaching this problem outside of your politics. Sana, I really wish
Scientifically.
it can be done, but it's not easy, I understand, because you know once you commit to one side, say, ay dapat I'm for this and that, I'm dapat lockdown ako, I'm for mask. What if new data shows na mali pala yung data na present dati? I mean, there have been retractions of studies. It's not unusual. Did you
Correct.
know? I actually found this amazing. I was doing my research. About 13% pala of some of the medical information we read annually are retracted. That 30%, this is already published papers. So how does that happen na 13%? And then you say na, you know what? I'm basing my what I'm telling you on evidence, on scientific articles. But you'd better check again, baka na-retract na eh.
Correct.
So that's how volatile things are with
The
science. Hindi
studies
pa
are.
pwedeng ano yan. Hindi yan pwedeng
Uh,
politically attached. It's not an
uh,
ideology.
Kaya, in connection yung sinabi ni Doc Iggy, yung studies can be retracted. Alam mo, isa sa mga, as a layperson, isa sa mga kondisyon, what do you call this? Isa sa mga rason kung bakit naniwala ako dyan sa hydroxychloroquine is because nga, merong 140 studies. So, sa tingin ko naman, sa dami ng studies na ginawa dyan sa hydroxychloroquine, ay maski na tatlo, apat, or 30 ang mag-retract, marami pa ring studies that point to its efficacy, no? Tapos sa remdesivir, yung ginagamit nila sa ospital, anim lang ang studies na, 6 or 7 studies. At itong remdesivir is widely used dito sa ating mga ospital. So nagtataka talaga ako bilang isang layperson kung bakit the medical community, the scientific community, do not look at uh, the compilation of numerous studies and actually make a conclusion out of it. Di ba?
Yeah,
Totoo
yeah.
yan, Francis, kasi it's a process eh. You know,
Hmm.
as you know, all of us know that there was a study many months ago that said hydroxychloroquine does not work, but then it was retracted.
Yun na nga yung sa Lancet,
So
di
so
ba?
imagine that people who were shouting, "Oh yay, yay, hindi pala nag-work ang hydroxychloroquine." Suddenly
Oo.
i-retract.
Oo nga, oo nga.
So those
Alam
are
mo, I've been
very
quote
prestigious scientific
journals.
journals that were retracted na apparently
Oo.
hindi pala ma-verify ng mga
Mm-mm.
authors kung paano ginather yung information. Since they cannot verify,
Correct.
they would not sign
Mm-mm.
on the article. Therefore, it was
Correct.
withdrawn. Kasi hindi nila ma-verify. Imagine that.
Alam mo ano, Mari, I'm very thankful dito sa mga doktor natin like Doc Iggy and Doc Homer. Si Doc Iggy, isa yan. Nung I was researching about hydroxychloroquine and everything, parati nang sinasabi niya, alam mo, follow your common sense, follow your common sense. Never sa akin nagsabi yan na, o hindi ka naman doktor, dapat
Mm.
sundan mo yung mga doktor. He always looked for the, na alam mo, Francis, ang sinabi sa akin ni Doc Iggy, pantay tayo eh. Sabi ko, paano naman tayo naging pantay? COVID is novel. Ang ibig sabihin ng novel ng COVID, pareho tayong walang alam tungkol doon. Hindi ba? Yan ang sinabi mo sa akin, Doc Iggy. Kaya sabi niya, patuloy mo yung pag-aaral mo at do not, if it makes sense to you, do not let other people put you down. Kasi what happens is that pag hindi ka doktor and you try to study it, sasabihin sa iyo, sino ka ba? Ano bang alam mo? Photographer ka lang, Francis, etc., etc. No? At madalas nga ang sinasabi ko, ang pinakikinggan kong doktor, yung mga doctors who can explain to me scientifically and logically how a medicine works, why it works, who can answer my questions, 'di ba? So a lot of all of our studies, all of our plans are based on science and they're based on logic, no? And they're never based on ad hominems na bakit ka maniniwala kay ganito, hindi naman yan specialist si Doc Iggy, hindi naman ang tawag diyan epidemiologist yan. Kailangan maniwala kayo kay halimbawa Dr. Salvania or whoever doctors. I'm naming him kasi masakit sa akin nung sinabi niya. And I will tell this already, na medyo masakit sa akin yung sinabi niya tungkol sa mga doktor natin na some doctors have to save themselves. Save we have to save some doctors from
Yun,
themselves.
oh.
And he was referring to the doctors of CDCP who were
CDC
CDC
Ph.
Ph who were recommending hydroxychloroquine. And ako, I am not a doctor, but I'm challenging him now. Dr. Salvania, there are so many studies that point to the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine and kindly show us what the negative studies are rather than do ad hominems, what the negative studies are. And perhaps our doctors can peer review the negative studies and tell you what's wrong with it. Let's not engage in any name calling. Let's engage in true science and facts. O yan. I said my
Well, I
piece.
think we can
Labas ko na.
I think
Ang
we can
sama.
Meron
begin.
akong kwento rin dyan, Francis. Ang ganda ng kwento ko tungkol dyan.
Sige nga, Doc.
Ano.
Pakikwento nga.
Kasi ganito, for example, I am an orthopedic surgeon. I would consider myself highly respected. I've done so many surgeries na I think others won't even bother trying because it's either too hard. But anyway, I've done my homework. I'm considered an expert. But this is what I can say. Don't ask me what the best implant is. Diba? May ibig sabihin yan eh. Don't ask an expert what the best implant is to use for surgery.
Bakit?
Because, syempre, may conflict of interest yun.
Ayun.
So, the same thing, I wouldn't ask an infectious disease doctor, what's the best brand of antibiotics?
Ayun.
Conflict of interest yun.
Si Doc Homer, bakit ka natatawa, Doc Homer?
Sige nga, Doc. Doc Homer.
Kasi I'm not the
Well-
only one who's observed this, but many very good, fair, and evidence-based doctors are already saying na may problema na ang medical community.
Yeah.
And some doctors will say, Dr. Agbayani, ano ka ba? Doktor ka, ba't mo sinasabi yan? But I've read other doctors say the same thing. One of them is actually si John Ioannidis. He wrote an article way back mga 2012, I think, citing what I'm saying now. Most of our studies are pharmacy-driven because nandun yung pera eh. I mean, how can a study progress kung walang pera? So again, I repeat, don't ever ask an orthopedic surgeon what the best brand of implant to use because we're not the best person to ask. In fact, you want to know whether joint replacement works or not. The study you read are the ones published by family physicians
Ayun.
because wala silang conflict of interest. In fact, if you understand yung Cochrane analysis, Cochrane reviews are not done by orthopedic surgeons on orthopedic issues. Cochrane reviews are done by someone who does not belong into the industry, who studies the industry. So those are one of the things na ginagawa namin, but not saying na yun lang ang best way. No? So again, really the best person to ask is not an infectious disease doctor when it comes to antibiotics.
Going back to the Lancet study and the New England Journal of Medicine, both I believe are 200 years old and really world-renowned, world-trusted. Ang problema was that the Surgisphere organization was apparently led by a Harvard graduate doctor, and he's the one that was behind one of the authors of that study. And doctors, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong anywhere here. But he was one of the authors of that study that was sent to and published by the Lancet, which was later retracted within 14 days. But among the doctors who stood up and spoke out about the errors, the apparent errors and contradictions in the study, was an ophthalmologist. So, malinaw na hindi ibig sabihin na porket hindi ka virologist, hindi ka epidemiologist, na hindi mo na alam yung you're a doctor, you receive the same training. so you know what to watch out for. Doc Homer, can you talk more about ano bang paborito mong study na gusto mong i-debunk
Well,
about
well,
hydroxychloroquine?
I mean, I mean, let's compare, hydroxychloroquine with remdesivir. If you would look at remdesivir, they only one study out of the many studies by China, from China and from the World Health Organization, the Solidarity, did not show any benefit. The only study that remdesivir, or the makers of remdesivir are trying to tout, is the one that showed that it has benefit in shortening the what we call, yung tinatawag, yung shortening yung day of ICU, in the, kumbaga, yung araw na nasa ICU sila, na shorten, no, but the mortality, no, it does not shorten, or it does not improve mortality, which is yung pinaka importante. So there's a lot of question why yung remdesivir was even approved by FDA. So and then Europe also ordered $1 billion worth of remdesivir, even though showing that it doesn't really improve mortality. So again, there's a question of uh, yung financial ties to how drugs are approved, no?
Yes.
Oh,
Uh, the other two studies which are normally brought out in response to our saying that hydroxychloroquine works are the Solidarity, the WHO Solidarity trials, and the UK recovery trials. Doc, what can you tell us about those two
Well,
studies?
the two trials, no, the one made by WHO, no, which is the Solidarity trial, no, and the recovery. Actually, they use a very high dose of hydroxychloroquine, up to 2,400 milligrams per day, no. Normally we only give 400 milligrams of hydroxychloroquine a day, so that's like 6 times as high as what you ordinarily give to patients for these kinds of infections. So of course, if you give that high dose, then they will have so many more side effects as compared to what you ordinarily use for patients on hydroxychloroquine, no? And then secondly, the issue of using hydroxychloroquine already on hospitalized patients. So yung una, in the Solidarity and the recovery trial, no, they showed that in hospitalized meaning na hospital na sila, no benefit, no. But there's a new study just came out, just I think, just I just read it a few hours ago, no, in Brazil, no, over 3,000 patients, if I remember correctly. They were given hydroxychloroquine with prednisone, no? And it showed that those on hydroxychloroquine and prednisone had a 24% improvement, or of dying, no? So again, there's study, as we go further along, no, you will see more study coming out that hydroxychloroquine does work, no. We're not saying remdesivir does not work. We're just saying that as of now, there is no data showing that remdesivir work as well as what these drug doctors or these drug companies are touting it to be. But we know that hydroxychloroquine works whether as outpatients or in hospitalized patients.
okay. Gusto ko rin malaman, Mari,
May
no?
I
I'd
add
like
to
to...
that, ano? Kasi sometimes,
Okay, okay.
parating sinasabi, kailangan raw may randomized control trials, no?
Mm.
But in the real world, may tinatawag tayo mga logical inferences or analysis whether a drug works or not. One, of course, yung clinical evidence ng mga doktor, although they say that's only anecdotal. But the other one is yung nangyari sa France. And there's another one na nangyari sa Brazil. Because sa France, they actually remove hydroxychloroquine because of what the WHO said from their market. So hindi nagamit yung hydroxychloroquine for about, I think, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. However, binalik nila after that period. And what did you observe about the results of the patients who were hospitalized? There was a drop. excuse me, there was an increase. There was an increase of
Yung
number
inalis.
of severe cases, and talagang very noticeable. They actually showed the graph that during the time na tinanggal yung hydroxychloroquine, there was an increased number of severe cases and even deaths. So that's just a perfect
Yun.
example of how it doesn't have to be a randomized controlled trial. The
Well,
other one is in Brazil. In Brazil, there was a region where they were given hydroxychloroquine. Kasi maraming regions sa Brazil. It's a big country. So the rest of the country, hindi nabigyan yon. So you might say na, oh, baka may advantage yung region na yun. But it's one of those proofs that doesn't have to be randomized controlled trial. But in that region, na nabigyan ng hydroxychloroquine, talagang mababa yung mortality, mababa yung hospitalization. And
eh,
again, meron pang
and
isa, di ba, Homer? Yung mga may rheumatoid arthritis. What can you say about that?
yes, yes. Yeah, so yung mga rheumatoid, no, they did not develop or they did not had an infection. I think to add that yung RCT, no, those doctors who keep on saying na, it should only be randomized controlled trials before you actually use the products or the devices. A lot of doctors, I'm sure they don't really know. Pero since the 1980s, no, 90%, 90% of drugs approved by the FDA are not from randomized controlled trials. So if the doctors keep saying, oh, wala namang randomized controlled trials yan wag mo gamitin yan. Therefore, all the drugs since the 1980s that have been approved by the FDA without a randomized controlled trials, wag na nilang gamitin. I think that's one thing that a lot of people and a lot of doctors are not aware of.
Correct, Homer, kasi isa pang ano dyan, if you do not use hydroxychloroquine in the early setting, wala naman sila ibibigay eh. You're not actually displacing anything. Kasi sabi nila, o nagbigay ka ng hydroxychloroquine. So tuloy, hindi namin nabigay yung wala. Di ba? Parang which is a bit, so wala naman para sa
Meron,
displace eh. Why not give it anyway?
meron akong
Kasi
ano
problem
pala.
kasi ng iba, akala nila pag nagbigay ka ng hydroxychloroquine, so hindi ka na pwede magbigay nitong gamot na to. Which is not
May
true.
cocktails, may ano yan may combinations yata yan, hindi ba mga doktor? May combinations yan.
Yes.
Kung may
Yes.
siya ng iba-ibang
So,
gamot katulad ng
yes.
budesonide and everything else. In any case, mga
Yeah.
docs, meron akong isang bagong message na natanggap which is very interesting from another doctor friend. Can you call now? Sabi niya gano'n. Dapat raw makinig tayo kay a certain doctor and uh, and the governor of a certain place is uh, has been gave permission to the doctors to implement early treatment plan in several barangays. Ayan. That's a development. So yung early treatment plans and protocols are given a go signal by a certain governor in a certain place to be implemented in several
Pero ano yung
barangays.
protocol nila? Anong gagamitin na gamot?
Ito yung mga protocol na
Yeah, yun ang
binabanggit
tanong. Ano yung
natin.
protocol?
Merong hydroxychloroquine dyan. At meron, I believe, ivermectin.
Wow.
Oo. So, hindi ba? Ang sinasabi po natin ay maraming treatment protocols na iba-iba which are being withheld by organizations, namely the World Health Organization. These treatment protocols are very effective and can be used. And it is not, I believe, tama ba mga doktor, hindi ito illegal. Hindi po illegal
No.
ang
No, it
paggamit
is not illegal.
nitong
Off, yeah,
protocol
because
na ito.
early as March or May, DOH already came out with a memo saying we can use antivirals and antibacterials, as off-label use for patients with COVID infection. So it's not illegal, I don't think
So
that's
fake
the
news
right,
'yon. Fake
you
news
know.
'yon, yung sinasabing
Yeah,
illegal ang
that
paggamit
sadly,
nito,
yun ang
Dr.
fake
Homer.
news, no?
Hindi naman kaya
Mm.
ni-revoke, Doc, after WHO came out with the solidarity, or what was it? The Lancet study. After the fake Lancet study came out, the WHO said, well, they halted their hydroxychloroquine trials, and then of course, all over the world, people stopped using hydroxychloroquine, di ba?
but the memo of
Nawala si Doc. Doc, nawala yung audio mo sandali.
Nawala.
Yan. Let's try
Oo.
again.
sorry, they said that, yeah, they said that all antivirals and antimicrobials, if they will retract that, then therefore they cannot use other drugs. They cannot use remdesivir, they cannot use budesonide, prednisone, heparin, all of them, they cannot use it kasi off-label yun eh.
Oo. Pero
Right?
ang
Ayun.
So,
ang claim kasi was that usage of hydroxychloroquine was causing arrhythmia and in some cases retinopathy.
as we have said, how long has hydroxychloroquine been used, no? To say, yun nga, the reason that they're saying that it can cause arrhythmia and retinopathy is because the dose was 1600 milligrams or 1.6 grams to 2.4 grams, no? We only use
Overdose.
400 milligrams, 0.4 grams per day. So, of course, kung ganun ka-high ang dose, talagang magkakaroon ka ng heart
Oo.
problems, no?
And
So
di
I
ba,
think that's
Yun.
one thing that we have to
Oo.
point out also.
ang WHO Solidarity
Yun.
Trial also rejected remdesivir, did it not? It said it was not working.
Yes, nothing worked except it seems to be nothing really worked except there was some advantage of using steroids, no, and
So,
heparin.
Ah,
mukhang walang
heparin.
lumalabas na pwedeng gamitin sa mga WHO trials. Meron ba? Is there
Um,
Yes,
anything?
ah,
yes,
Which one?
yes. Wala
wala.
talaga.
Walang
Remdesivir didn't
lumalabas.
work. Yeah.
Okay.
Wala. Alam mo, Docs, ang tansya ko niyan, hindi ako. Ang tansya ko diyan parang it is suspicious. Bakit sa dinami-dami ng trial, unang-una, ang World Health Organization ang nagpatigil ng solidarity trials ng hydroxychloroquine gawa nga ng faulty Lancet study na yan na lumabas. Secondly, ang sinasabi ng World Health Organization, uh, so tinigil nga yung clinical solidarity trials. Secondly, ang dosages na nirekomenda na galing sa World Health Organization is highly overdosed nga. So nagtataka ako, being the World Health Organization, bakit hindi nyo alam yung dosage, yung tamang dosage? Isn't that very suspicious? Kaya nga nagkakaroon ng mga anong tawag doon, conspiracy theorists. Ang sinasabi
Yeah.
ng
Yeah, and
conspiracy theorists ay
yeah,
ang World Health Organization is funded by Bill Gates. Tama nga naman, that is a fact. Funded now largely by Bill Gates who invested so much money in vaccines. Kaya parang sinasabi nila, abay may conflict of interest. Siyempre, sisirain ng World Health Organization yung mga studies na yan. Remember mga nakikinig po kayo, hindi kami conspiracy theorists. Ni-explain ko lang kung bakit nila sinasabi na may conspiracy ang World Health at saka si Bill Gates para siraan ang ibang gamot upang itaguyod ang vaccine. Yun lang ang sinasabi ko. It doesn't mean that we believe in them.
Respond muna si
Pero,
Dr. Homer tapos I'll
yun,
pose a
Doc,
question to
sige,
Doc
Doc.
Iggy. Doc Homer muna.
I think what we should also note is hydroxychloroquine is actually an essential drug listed by the World Health Organization. So, there's no excuse why they would use a very very high dose, even though they already know the standard dose for hydroxychloroquine is actually 400 to 600 milligrams.
And do you know the story behind it? Actually, they were
Oh,
asked yung mga lead researchers nung sa England, yung recovery study. They were asked in a French radio program. The lead author was asked, "What do you know why this dose was given? Why was it so high?" So ang reply niya is that he thought it was being used as the dose for amoebic dysentery. So, parang na-shock lahat kasi ikaw ang lead author nun and you would say that. So, nag-reply yung isang lead author. Sabi, probably he wasn't too aware of it being a lead author. He was just supervising the whole thing. But then he was called up and asked to verify what he said. And he did verify it na yun ang talaga alam niya. So in other words, even the lead author of that study, and it's on record, and you can search it. I'm not making this up. Did not even know the correct dose to use because even thought it was amoebic dysentery.
Okay, Doc,
Yeah, that's right.
my question naman, wait, there we go. My question naman was going to be on the issue nga of why it appears, no, like I've asked this before, is the situation in the Philippines such that the Department of Health rules over, decides treatment options for the doctors who are personal doctors. If I were to be, God forbid, I get COVID and I come to you, would the DOH be allowed to overrule your prescription for me and say, no, 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 you can't dose that, you can't give that because we don't like that drug? Doc Iggy first, maybe.
Homer, mas kabisado mo.
Actually, no, no, you cannot. I mean, DOH again, same thing because DOH came out with the off-label use of antibacterials and antivirals. So therefore, uh, they cannot stop doctors from prescribing drugs that they think that might help um, their patients. Now, remember, we're not just talking about COVID. If they do start doing this, then there will be a crisis, meaning there's going to be a problems. The whole medical profession will become in danger. Because why? Then parang lumalabas that the big brother is taking over the medical practice of the Philippines, which is, I think, that's not very nice to see.
But isn't that precisely the problem ngayon, Doc? Kasi we're hearing that a lot of doctors are afraid to prescribe hydroxychloroquine precisely because they're going to be, sabihin na natin, poor choice of words, pero persecuted by the DOH or in a worst
No,
case
no, no,
scenario,
no.
prosecuted.
It's not actually DOH who will be they will be in trouble with the problems with doctors who want to prescribe. Actually, there are doctors who are prescribing. No, they're just not telling everyone because why? They don't want to get in trouble with their respective medical societies, because the medical societies will usually tell their members, okay, you can do this, you cannot do that, you can prescribe this, you cannot prescribe that. So the problem is not with the DOH. The problem lies with their respective medical societies, because they might get in trouble with them.
In the same vein, can the WHO dictate to our Philippine Department of Health and say, no, you're not supposed to prescribe this, stop doing it?
Same thing. You cannot. I mean, DOH. I mean, World Health Organization. It's just an It's not a, how would you say, executive body that tells the whole world what they should do. They are like a consulting body. They are not really to enforce anything to governments. No, and that's. I think that's one. That's also one of the things that is frustrates the World Health Organization, kasi they only advise. They cannot really dictate. No,
Which
what to do.
leads to the next question. We went into lockdown because the WHO estimate was a 3.4% global death rate, which would
Yes.
have produced a death toll of 3.67 million Filipinos. So we all agreed to a lockdown. Well, agreed, quote unquote, to a lockdown because we were expecting deaths in that number. No? As of now, of course, any single death is more than we would want to see. But we have seen over 7,000 deaths, which are a very far cry from 3.67 million. And yet here we are 8 months later, and they're still talking about, government is still talking about, more precisely, the IATF and DOH, and even the local mayors are talking about extending the lockdowns further. What do you have to say, Dr. Iggy?
My favorite topic. Okay, so as early as April, I was already saying lockdowns don't work because it causes a major harm to society, to economy, to employment, to businesses, to other diseases that aren't taken care of because too much effort is being given to COVID. So all the tuberculosis, heart disease, diabetes are not being taken care of. There were children who needed an operation that died because they could not get it. Those are the heart patient children. So you have to think of those na nakukos side effect yan ng lockdown, and we tend not to listen to that. And then there's the United Nations Food Authority in April. This was in April. They estimated that because of the COVID lockdowns, there will be an increased number of people who will go hungry. As much as 80 million people will go hungry. That was in April. Yan ang estimate nila. It's already November. I'm sure the estimate would have gone up. Certainly may countries na rin na nag-lessen lockdown. But come on, it will be around 300 million people who will go hungry, and I'm sure most of those will also die. So let's not kid around. Lockdowns also kill. So even the WHO has said it is a last resort that should be used only to allow some rest, to allow the health system to reorganize, but it should not be used this much in the long term kasi you have to think of those things na namatay. Does it work? It probably helps in that way. Kaya lang, at what cost? So people are saying, uy, salamat sa lockdown, konti lang ang namatay. But actually, that may not be true. Salamat rin sa lockdown, baka marami pang mas mamamatay doon sa side effect niya. So, is there a way out? Actually, there is a way out kasi ayaw lang talaga i-discuss scientifically. And it's because they have made it in such a political thing. If you were a politician, you were in March, you were asked, magla-lockdown ba tayo, Mr. President? At tanungin natin yung DOH, magla-lockdown ba tayo? Ang sagot, yes, kasi po, yung death rates mukhang mataas, yung mortality rate is 3.6%. Estimate po natin kung mangyayari yun, maybe 1 million Filipinos will die. In fact, even a little more. So who is the president who will say na, ay hindi, huwag tayo mag-lockdown, 1 million na mamamatay.
Correct.
Okay, so we went into lockdown. So what happened next was, kailan natin tatanggalin itong lockdown? Medyo bumababa na yung numbers. Pag tinanggal niyo po yung lockdown, Mr. President, baka madagdagan yung mamamatay. So hindi tayo makalabas dun sa lockdown because we have no alternative. Which is wrong now because alam na natin yung data. We know that lockdowns is hurting our country, our economy. You do not have proper transportation. You do not allow children to go to school, which is causing so much harm. Businesses are just not going up. We're either stagnant or going backwards. So it really doesn't work. So it should stop, and people saying it should stop, but yun na nga, takot na naman, baka tumaas ang cases. No? So we are offering something. We are offering a better treatment in hydroxychloroquine. We're offering ivermectin. We're offering so many things like to improve immune response. Then, what was very surprising in about mid-October, late or mga October 15, I think, which I have been reading since April, they came out with this idea called, it's in the Great Barrington Declaration. The idea basically is to stop the lockdown and offer something that is much, much safe, which means hindi mo ila-lockdown so you can bring up the economy, but you do not endanger the vulnerable and the elderly. So they have a strategy, but every country will have its particular way of doing it. So is this an experiment? It is not necessarily an experiment because epidemics are actually ended by herd immunity. But the way it will be done now is medyo may pakikilaman ng konti. And there's been modeling studies to show that it will work. If you believe that your modeling studies on masks work, they say that if you use this much mask and the other person uses mask, it will drop the infection rate by 40%. So that's a modeling study. But the same way, they are saying that if you do this focus protection method, it will work. So ano ba ang choice natin? We cannot stay on lockdown. And they say na, okay, antayin na lang natin, Doc, yung vaccination because that will save us. Unfortunately, on average, even with the best scientific, safety takes time. Efficacy, you might see it immediately, but sometimes it even wanes off. So I'm looking at maybe 2 years since the time that they developed the first vaccine. After that, before we can say na safe enough yan to use. And then pag nagamit mo yan, immediate ba? Lift lockdowns na rin ba? Hindi pa eh. So it also takes time. So it might be another half a year. So we're talking about 2023 before we lift the lockdowns. Does that even make sense to anyone?
Mhm.
Marami nang namatay by that time. You
That
won't see certain restaurants, you won't see certain businesses. You will never see your job come back.
correct.
My patients,
Mhm.
marami nang nahirapan, na probably will have problems. Supposed to be na amputate because of infection, probably hindi nagawa. So, daming ganon. We don't look at the bigger picture.
Ang
When
yun
I
yun nga, I think tama si Doc Iggy, yung we decided hindi based on science but based on fear.
mm,
At saka we decided na hindi natin tinitignan yung effects ng lockdown, and what might be the effects of a lockdown, which we are now experiencing. Ang daming nawala ng trabaho, ilang milyon, millions of people lost their jobs, and because they've lost their jobs, hindi na sila kayang magpa-hospital, they cannot buy the medicines, they cannot live normal lives. So again, our group, at nananawagan ulit ako, our group has a plan. We have, I think it is a very excellent plan to be able to get out of lockdowns even before December, which means, uh, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Doctors Homer and Doc Iggy, kaya nating lumabas ng lockdown if our plan is implemented immediately by at least November 15. Not November 15, December 15, which means Mr. President can give our country a very Merry Christmas, and we can go back to celebrate with our loved ones and friends. Alam mo, Mari, tayo we have prophylaxis eh. Kaya medyo ang matapang tayo lumabas. We are trying to live a semblance of a normal life. Again, alam natin yung risks ng COVID. We are informed by I call it our own back scientific team or group of doctors to back us up,
our
and
own
I'm very
CDC.
grateful for that. Our own CDC Ph to help us. So yun, kaya natin to. Sana magkaroon tayo ng appointment kagad with the IATF, with the President, at sina Sir Harry Roque, kung makikinig siya sa atin, at i-present ito sa Presidente. Our doctors are willing to defend their data and their studies. And I'm very confident kasi narinig ko na yung side nila eh. Narinig ko na rin yung ibang side eh. At I'm not being biased, pero hello, it makes sense eh. So much sense to me.
Meron kasi akong Francis, meron akong narinig na
Mm.
statistics na hindi maganda from
Ano
one
yun?
of our fellow members, si Brian Masigan, who mentioned that at the onset of the lockdowns, the typical, let's say, middle class Filipino had enough savings to take him through 3 weeks. 3 weeks. It's now been 8 months. Paano na?
Masakit
Okay?
talaga.
Napag-usapan din namin yung issue ng, okay, let's say, inutang na niya ang last 8 months niya. para, para to keep on eating. Pagbukas mo ng ekonomiya, kung negosyante yan, saan kukuha ng puhunan yan? At
Correct.
yung pag nagbukas ka ng ekonomiya, meron ka ng mabebenta, kunyari yung stock mo pwede mong balikan,
Mm.
sino naman ang may pera pa para bumili
Para
sa'yo?
bumili. Mm.
No, for 8 months, this has been the situation. So, and they keep putting it off further. I don't know kung anong, that's why the challenge that I've been making is, kung gusto nilang i-extend yung lockdown sa more, edi itigil na muna natin yung sweldo nila. Yung mga nagdidesisyon na ituloy yung lockdown, tigil muna sila tulad ng atin na 8 months na wala tayong mga
Oo,
ano.
masakit.
Mm.
Masakit, Mari. Maski na sa akin, masakit. I've had to, at times, I am short and, you know, jobs are far in between. And I consider myself even lucky to have jobs
Pareho tayo.
and certain projects. Oo, sa industriya natin. Alam nyo, and I'm sure the other people know that. So, in a situation like this, ang fear ko kasi dito sa IATF ay pare-pareho yung mga ideas nila. So they are just sila mismo, they just agree with each other. Yung sinasabi po namin ay medyo iba
Out
sa
of the box.
ginagawa ngayon. Out of the box, hindi, actually, when I say
Sa
out
bagay,
of
oh.
the box, parang hindi eh. Kasi it makes sense. It makes sense. It is not difficult to understand eh. Yung protection of the vulnerable and the elderly. Bakit mo naman poprotektahan yung mga hindi mamamatay at yung hindi in danger na mamatay? Siyempre, ang poprotektahan mo, yung mga mamamatay. Di ba? So, kung wala kang danger na mamatay, hindi mo kailangan ng protektahan. Kung wala kang danger na kapitan ng COVID, pwede kang lumabas. Yung mga bata, walang danger na mamatay, pwedeng pumunta ulit sa eskwela. You don't need to burden the families. Maganda rin yung sinabi ni Doc Iggy. Sa bawat batang nag-homeschooling, may isang member ng family ang pinipigilan mong magtrabaho. Right away, alam mo, ang daming komplikasyon. So, sana makinig sila sa atin kaagad at magkaroon tayo. We are not anti-government again. I want to say, we are not anti-government. Gusto namin tumulong sa gobyerno. At ako personally, mahal ko ang ating presidente kasi nakikita ko yung puso niya.
Okay, so mga doc, we have covered the fact that we do not believe that COVID is a hoax. We have been proposing treatment ever since we first launched in September, and we have never stopped proposing treatment. So why would we be proposing treatment for a virus that we do not believe exists? Obviously, we believe that it exists. Secondly, we are proposing, and that is probably what has put the target on our backs. We are proposing one of our treatment options. Just one of our treatment options is controversial, primarily because, again, of the U.S. elections. We believe, na politika lang, and this is the from all sources say na this is the first time we have ever seen this happen, where a drug becomes so controversial that it is banned in this a 65-year-old drug, no less. No? But let's also point out that we are offering other options. We are suggesting vitamin D, vitamin C supplements, and the doctor should fill out this list for me. Ivermectin, budesonide has already been mentioned. Ano pa ba mga iba? Regeneron, Viptadil,
Zinc.
zinc, leronlimab. What am I missing, mga doc?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Meron akong
Para mabigat
ako
ng
meron
ating
isa,
responsibility,
TCM, meron akong
feel
TCM
niyo
na
ba na
stock.
may... Do you
Sorry.
feel na para mabigat ang responsibility natin? Tapos sa asa ba ang Pilipinas sa atin lang? Actually, it is a big
Alam mo,
responsibility.
Yes.
I'm learning more from you guys. I'm learning more from what I read, and I realize it's a big responsibility. And it's no longer a joke, eh. And it's really worth all my time, and I would really like to put all my efforts, all my passion into this, because I really think if we can really help our country this much, you can die happy.
Right. Agree.
man, yeah.
Agree.
I
Ang
agree.
key
Diba?
issue
Parang
talaga,
ganun. Yun ang feeling ko about this.
Doc, kasi ang tawag nga ang battle cry ng ating movement is flatten the fear. And apparently that is the key issue that we're dealing with here. Even amongst let's say members of the IATF, members of the DOH, maybe because they have not looked into the studies regarding all these other drugs. I don't know how that's possible, that you would be involved in dealing with COVID and you have not done these studies. And yet here we are, kami layman ni Francis pareho, pero napag-aralan na namin to the extent that we can understand the lingo,
Correct.
no? And when we cannot understand, we can always turn to you to ask you to explain it. Pero it's
Correct.
very strange talaga, di ba, Francis?
Ang tawag nga sa atin, doktor, minsan ang tawag sa akin, Dok, ano ba yung Alam mo, parati ko sinasabi, hindi naman ako doktor. I am Dr. Love. I am not a real doctor. Ah.
Okay, what have we missed any ano na-address na natin yung mga maling pagkaintindi sa kung anong positions ng CDCPH. And again, I'll remind everyone that the official positions of CDCPH are what we have put down in writing. Now, if you hear that we believe COVID is a hoax, please show us where any of our official statements have said we don't believe that COVID exists. That we have also, as I mentioned earlier, we have a variety of opinions regarding vaccines, regarding masks. So there is no official position from CDCPH as the interim communications officer of the group. I can assure you of that. There is no official position on masks or on vaccines. Merong anti-vaccine sa amin, meron ding pro-vaccine, merong open-minded may liberal. So we're not taking any definitive positions on any of those issues. And so please, if you're going to do any reporting on us, or if you're going to try to smear us, do so on the basis of what we've actually put out in print. Okay? And by print, I mean we have several papers out already. Okay. In
Well
closing,
said.
gentlemen, unless we've covered, we have not covered anything that you want to discuss.
Okay, ako, can I go
Thank
ahead in
you.
Yes.
closing
Yes. Go ahead.
first? I have another. Salamat, Mari, no, dito. At again, being the interim membership committee head, we would like to invite citizens as well as doctors who would like to help us here to join the group and get in touch with us through Flatten the Fear page or even me on my Facebook page. Just message me, and if you would like to help us in anything, communications, in whatever, disseminating information, or if companies would like to approach us and for us to give them advice so they can get their workers back and protected, we are open to that also. We are willing to help you. And lastly, for the government, we want to help you, Mr. President, and the IATF. We are one with you guys, and I'm sure the what you guys want is to lift the lockdowns. We have a plan that we have worked on that we would like to present to you that we may able and we believe we may able to lift the lockdowns by December 15 at least if you guys uh, can please give us a chance to present our plan. Yun lang, maraming salamat po. Mari, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Mari.
Sorry, who's going to go first? Dr. Homer or Dr. Iggy?
Say over.
Okay, so just would like to tell everyone, no, we should not be afraid now of COVID because we do have treatments. We do have the knowledge and the experience how to treat, yes, to treat them properly. So we should not be afraid. Okay, so that's my final message.
Salamat po.
I echo the sentiments of Dr. Homer Lim, the great. And I'm so thankful that I
Hello.
have people like Mari Kaimo and Francis Abraham and many people behind CDC Ph. We need your help. We need researchers. We need presenters. We need leaders. Anything of your help would be of would be to even help us communicate with people who make decisions and policies in the government would be very important to us. I think we're doing something very good. This is not just a whim, and we've done the research, and we are not alone. We are backed up by giants, as I've always said, the Great Barrington Declaration, and we added the tweak that is including certain drugs that should have been considered by the WHO, and of course to improve our immune system. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and lahat ng nanonood or manonood pa. Maraming salamat. Thanks for joining this CDCPH
Good night.
live stream. Salamat po.
Good night. Good night.